Thank you for joining me for the Daily Bread Bible study. We are looking at the book of Esther today in a two-part series, just 2 days to go over the whole book of Esther. We are looking at chapters 1 through 5 on this day 145, Sunday, May 24th, 2020, for the Daily Bread Bible study. So the briefest of brief overviews of the book of Esther is that it is a story of faithful Jews given opportunities to be leaders loyal to God, and from this loyalty, save other Jews from oppression. We see the king Ahasuerus, the king of Persia, is the monarch for this area, and Esther and Mordecai become involved with the king through the plot. So we see how that is starting in Esther 1. This earthly power in King Ahasuerus of Persia displays his power by throwing a lavish celebration in the capital city of Susa. The opulence is absurd, leading to some arrogance even within the king. So King Ahasuerus believes he controls many things. He does not control the spirit or the love of his own spouse, Queen Vashti. And so Queen Vashti is summoned really to be objectified by these drunk men, and she refuses. Consulting his officials, they are worried about rebellion from women who might hear of this story. And so they decide to depose Queen Vashti and look for another woman who is, quote, better than she, as it says in Esther 1:19. Chapter 1 ends with a decree from the king declaring that every man should be made master in his own house. Esther 1:22. It's a declaration from the king. From the standpoint of the men in his empire, it would seem pretty passive-aggressive to, quote, order your spouse to follow, quote, the king's rules, right? Love is not an order from a king. It is a way of living with gratitude in our hearts and respect for the other person that God has joined us with and united us with. Ideally, spouses will model this type of self-giving love from God and not seek to objectify each other, as King Ahasuerus did with Queen Vashti, and also avoid saying no to their partner's request, which is what Queen Vashti did. Regardless of who's right or wrong here, they're not working as a team. And so in Esther 2, God uses this superficial king in order to bring his people's deliverance. Now, King Ahasuerus seeks to replace Queen Vashti with a young virgin. He is looking for a girl that, quote, pleases him, indicating his self-serving search for another wife. We are then introduced to the story of love. Love between the characters Mordecai and Esther. Now, this Mordecai, as he is mentioned in Ezra and Nehemiah, probably Haggai as well too, he is a faithful Jew who seeks to build up his people. And as such, he sees his younger cousin become orphaned. That's right. Mordecai and Esther are cousins. Could Esther have been orphaned because of the harshness of the kings of Babylon and Persia? Were they responsible for taking Esther's parents' lives? Not exactly sure, but for whatever reason, Esther is orphaned, and Mordecai has compassion and love for her. This love, this compassion, means that he adopts her as his own daughter. He provides for her because he respects women, not as objects to be shown off, but as people with needs and basic human needs as well as he does. By the hands of God, King Ahasuerus finds Esther and is pleased with her. The king takes her into his harem in order to beautify her, and Mordecai walks outside each day outside of the place where the harem is at, so that way, he could check and know what's happening with Queen Esther, or Esther, I should say. He wants to make sure that she's okay. He has a fathering spirit towards her, and he loves her, and so he wants to make sure that she is doing well. As a year passes, Esther is then presented to the king, and she is humble and beautiful, which I assume the king sees as submissive. She's not going to provide any problems for him, and so that might also make her more attractive to him, who's insecure of his own power. Anyways, she is made queen instead of Queen Vashti. Now, when Mordecai goes back and goes to follow Esther to the king's gate, now that she is brought into the king's court, he loves her as a cousin and is still seeking to see how she was doing. Now, upon waiting, he overhears a plot to kill the king. And then he informs Queen Esther, who in turn informs King Ahasuerus. And the conspirators are discovered and eliminated. And this good deed is then recorded in the annals of the king. Now, I don't believe Mordecai is given any sort of reward for this, but he's just taking care of people out of compassion. Esther chapter 3, we again see the male arrogance come into play, this time with a character called Haman. And this chief official of King Ahasuerus' court cares about his own appearance and sees people bow before him as he enters into the king's palace. Now, he sees almost everyone bow before him except for Mordecai, the Jew. Haman becomes angry and conspires to kill him, but feeling that just killing Mordecai is beneath him, he seeks to kill the Jews as a whole. So upon informing the king about this rebellious Jew and the rebellious Jewish people, saying that they will be a threat to him, he offers to give the king money out of his personal wealth, and then gets King Ahasuerus to write a law in Esther 3:13. Letters were sent by couriers to all the king's provinces, and giving orders to destroy, to kill, and to annihilate all Jews, young and old, women and children, in one day, the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month of Adar, and to plunder their goods. It says that the king and Haman sit back and drink, and they are pleased with themselves. Yet the people of the city of Susa are distressed. I imagine they're thinking, if the Jews are targeted, which group of people is next? So it may not be the wisest leadership move, but the king gets to decide. Esther 4, we see that Mordecai is informed of the decree and laments. He fasts and wears sackcloth and sits in ash. Queen Esther wants to know why Mordecai is upset and lamenting, and she learns of the decree to kill the Jews. Esther is hesitant to confront the king at first, yet Mordecai reminds her that even she will not be spared. In Esther 4:13, it says, "Do not think that the king's palace, that you will escape any more than all the other Jews. For if you keep silent at such a time as this, relief and deliverance will rise for the Jews from another quarter, but you and your father's family will perish. Who knows? Perhaps you have come to royal dignity for just such a time as this." For such a time as this is what I've heard it been said. It's a famous phrase here, a phrase sitting as Esther is making a decision. And she decides. This is the call for all who follow God, right? God has equipped us with our lives, and we have opportunities to shape the future. We can be agents of God's deliverance or sit back and watch God work through other means. There are no guarantees that humans will listen to us, but being faithful to God means confronting kings for the sake of ourselves and our neighbors. Calling for the prayers and solidarity of her fellow Jews, Queen Esther makes a plan to confront the king. So in Esther 5, in her royal best, Queen Esther goes into the court of King Ahasuerus. Now the king gives her permission to speak, and Queen Esther proposes an honoring of two self-absorbed men, King Ahasuerus and Haman. Wanting to feel honored, the two men jump to the table to go to dinner with Queen Esther. And when they are filled with wine, she invites them to do it again tomorrow night. Haman is in good spirits from drinking good spirits, but yet he sobers in sadness upon seeing Mordecai not bow to him as he leaves the king's gate. And this apparently strong man becomes quickly depressed. He coerces his friends and wife to listen to his sad perspective, and the people gathered take agency to make a plan, instead of one who is technically the master of his own house in Haman. It's Haman's cohort that proposes building gallows to hang Mordecai, which Haman happily enacts. And so that takes us to the end of this part of Esther. We will see the follow-up to that next time. We will see how Esther and Mordecai bring salvation to the Jews with the help of God.